It's been a really long time since I've set up a blog, and there are a lot of reasons. So I want to talk about one of the effects of trauma, and not just from being a survivor of domestic violence, but just trauma and input that you get your entire life about all sorts of various things. In my particular case, I'm talking about food. When I was blogging a while ago, I was on a very restrictive diet and I was doing really well. I'd lost over 65 pounds and my body was looking good. My arthritis wasn't as bad in my legs, my back. Inflammation was reduced in general. I mean, all the things that you would expect from weight loss from a medical perspective. And I was feeling good, but I was also feeling deprived all the time. And then COVID hit and I tried to stay on my program, but it was impossible, partly because buying the ingredients was just really hard. I was really reluctant to have my groceries delivered, especially things that were like produce, because my experience with that had been spotty at best and awful most of the time. So the depression set in and I slid backwards. And the further I slid, the more weight came back on. And I know that that's the normal approach for most of us with dieting. And I realized that in part of what was happening on my blog was you were seeing this weight loss happening in real time, whether you realized it or not. I went back and I looked at some of the videos and you could begin to see the weight loss showing in my face, and I was looking better. And I was even posting pictures of, hey, look at me, look how much smaller I am. And that felt good for a while. But then as the weight started coming back, I felt like a failure. And the old tapes, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, started running through my brain over and over again. And that's part of it. But it's not all of it. One of the things that I've been able to uncover in my therapy, and blessings to my therapist because she's amazing, is just issues around food and restriction. I grew up with a mom who was heavyset her whole life. And she would say things to me like, do you want to look like me? Do you want to be like me? You can only have 2 cookies. 2 cookies, that's it, no more. And that kind of restriction kind of embeds itself. And every time I would start to gain a little bit of weight, do you want to look like me? You know, it's easier to take it off when you're young. It's so hard when you get older. Do you want to look like me? Well, I thought my mother was beautiful. So I guess, yes, mommy, I do want to look like you. Sorry, this is emotional. And the dogs are barking. So sorry about that. All right, so we have that tape going. In high school, when I was studying really hard to get good at music, my music teacher's wife was also a phenomenal cook and seamstress. She was an amazing seamstress. And she looked at me one day and she said, you know, you'll look better on stage if you're smaller. And then she made me a series of really beautiful dresses, but I couldn't get into them. They were size 3. And I was about a 7 or a 9. Oh no, a 7 or a 9. Oh no. So she suggested that I lose the weight so I could wear the beautiful dresses. And it seemed like a good incentive, but her idea of how to do that was to get a bagel, plain bagel, and nibble on it all day long, and then have a protein and a salad and something like that, maybe a piece of fruit for dinner. And that was it. And I did that because she was an authority figure and I trusted her. And I got into my size 3 and I looked good in my size 3. Of course I looked good. You know, I mean, I was young. Yes, I looked great. Ultimately, she died of anorexia. She, who could have imagined that. After she died, I stopped eating just a bagel and weight started to come back on. When I was getting married the first time, back in the late 70s, everyone said, oh, you'll look so much better in your wedding dress if you're smaller. So I went on another fad diet to lose weight, and I did. I lost 2 dress sizes. I wasn't skinny by any means, but I was certainly smaller than I was when my first husband and I got together. And then eventually that weight came back. And so it went up and down, up and down, up and down. When I wanted to get pregnant, the midwives told me I had to be below a certain number or they wouldn't let me into the program. So I struggled. I lost the weight. I dieted. I remember in particular, I joined some weird diet program, and the woman there told me if I wanted to continue on the program, I should avoid going back to visit my family through the holidays because they would make me eat food that I shouldn't be eating. And I broke my mother's heart that year. And as fate would have it, it would turn out to be one of the last times I could have ever spent Hanukkah with my mom. And that weighed heavily. And I had the baby, and I had baby fat. So I went on another program to lose weight, and another, and another, and another, varying in restrictions. Some were basically, high protein, low carb, caloric restrictions. I went on a Cambridge diet that was a liquid diet. You just drank these shakes 3 times a day. I got down to a really, really small weight when I got involved with the creep. And then that weight stayed off for a while. And then, of course, it came back. And I lost a little more, and then I gained back. And I'd lose and I'd gain back. And then I finally left him after years on the road where food was scarce. So I ate anything and everything that was in front of me because I didn't know if I'd have food the next day. I would let the kids order whatever they wanted and only order a very small something for myself, if at all, beyond coffee, and wait for them to not finish and then eat their leftovers. And of course, when you're living on the road, you're eating truck stop food and Waffle Houses and nothing that says healthy eating. When I married my last husband, and I do mean last, I gained, I lost, I gained, I lost. I went back and forth. I went on fen-phen, damn near killed me. Didn't stop me from trying phentermine a few years ago, by the way. I lost, I gained, I lost, I gained, and so it went. My father said to me on the occasion of his 83rd birthday, when we took him to Washington, D.C., he pulled me aside and asked me to come into his hotel room to talk to him. And he said, you have to lose weight. No man's going to want you if you're fat. And no man's going to want you if you're fat, kicked up, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid. And so the cycle went. So, dear friends, when I gained back pretty much everything I had just lost recently, I didn't want to get on in front of a camera because I'd gained back all this weight. And what kind of credibility would I have if I'm fat, ugly, and stupid? Well, I'm working on it. I'm working on my food issues. It's not just from the creep. It's not just from the abuse. It's from a lifetime and a lifetime of diet culture. So maybe I'll get thinner, maybe I won't. But what I'm working on now is just accepting who I am. Because at the end of the day, does anything else really matter? I'll try to blog more often if I can, but it's hard. And I appreciate you all for visiting. Thanks.